Right. I don't know. Do we want to present ourselves in case anybody else watches this?
Why not?
All right. I'm Simon. I'm in France. I'm a teacher, and I teach English. That's me.
Okay, I'm Sarah. I'm in Glasgow. I used to be a learning technologist, but I can't work technology. But I have cute cats.
Yeah. They're your deputies.
They are.
My name is Terry, and I teach in a regional university in the middle of Kentucky in Cave Country. And I'm happy to be here.
So this is an impromptu meeting on air, and that explains why we've got two cats. And we don't know, one of these picnics, we don't know where the conversation is going to lead, but that's the sort of breath of fresh air when we're always having to think about what we should be saying or what we have to say next. It's just, for me, it's a bit of a holiday, and I need holidays, particularly this week.
Yeah, I don't know. How long have we been doing picnics? A couple of years? 2 or 3 years? Off and on?
I should think at least 2 years. Let me just think about that. I reckon about two years. So we started out about Rhizo, was it Rhizo 14 or Rhizo 15?
I think it was 14.
Rhizo 14 is where everything started.
Life.
Yes. Yes. There was nothing before Rhizo 14.
No. It's a bit like it's like this Genesis. and he created it in 6 weeks. So if Dave Cormier ever hears this, Dave, you're God. In this analogy, at least. So we better not give it to him, otherwise it's going to be a bit worrying. Yeah, 3 years ago. We did doing this for 3 years. 3 years.
Wow.
My God, we're very, very. What's the word?
Accomplished.
I'm not sure that's the case. I've just found the first one. It was 3 years ago. And 33 views. And I was sitting looking much younger in front of a potted plant.
Well, I'm.
And there was Keith, and there was you, Terry, and me. So it'd be interesting to see actually how many of these things we've done. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Blimey. 7.
Is that a number? Blimey, is that a number?
Number 8. No, it's not a proper one. 7, 8. I think we're almost up to double figures. 9, 10. God, this is number 11. Legs 11. We better make it a good one.
Time flies when you're having picnic.
It definitely does.
Nah, let's not make it a good one. Let's just make it a crappy one.
Yeah, all right. Let's make it the worst one that we ever done.
Excellent. 11. I don't like the number 11. It's a prime number. I don't like it.
Have you got anything to say about 11, Sarah?
I don't think. No, I don't think 11 is a very auspicious number.
Why?
It's too straight.
Most definitely.
So you want bit of...
I remember 11, 11, 11. It was a very bad day. It's a very bad day. 11, 11, 11. One of the worst days of my life. I don't know what happened, but it was bad.
And we're on Friday the 13th.
Indeed.
We are.
So do you think, I mean, there are sort of numerology, that's a thing, isn't it?
It is.
What is it?
It's probably the science of numbers, isn't it?
I thought it was like astrology.
Well, that's probably a science as well, isn't it? That's really, really funny. When you Google numerology, it comes up with numerology/horoscope.com.
Oh, there you go.
Get free numerology and decode the patterns of the universe.
Wow.
There's the Kabbalah, which is totally numbers based. The Torah is all kinds of
So
numbers.
number 11 is the most intuitive of all numbers. It's instinctual, charismatic, dynamic, and capable. There you go. There you go.
So that's a question, actually, because for you, this is number 1.
Yes.
And for us, it's number 11.
Yeah.
So how does that one work out?
Well, considering you've just said you're going to make this the shittest of all of them, I'm feeling really pleased to be invited.
I think Sarah just came up with the title for this episode. The shittiest one of them all. Number 11.
Yes, but it won't be, because from your perspective, it will be the best because it will be the first. Whereas for us, it will be the worst because it's number 11. That's what Terry said. I'm blaming him.
You know, technically, if you've only got a sample of one and you say it's the best, conceivably, it's also the shittiest.
Yeah.
Because you don't have anything to compare it to.
Yeah, unless you do another one.
Unless you do another one. So doing another one. So you can have proper perspective.
And then we have to decide on criteria. How do you actually measure the shit?
I think we have to do it first and then look back at it and say, okay, that was shitty and that was shitty and that was shitty. That was good. We leave that out, cut that out.
That's not very scientific.
We could make a best compilation of this and just cut out all the good stuff and just put in all that episode 11 instead of just using the whole thing. It's a thought.
How do you select? I mean, who's going to select it? Do we do it democratically?
It's Sarah's ethics committee to do it.
Jesus. I tell you what, that's a really good idea, because they'll probably decide you can't use any of it, so we'll just keep all the silences and take all the words out.
It'll be like a John Cage picnic where nobody says anything. It's like 4:30, 4:27, 4:57, what it's called.
We did that, Terry. We've already done it. Do you not remember the time where there was nobody turned up except you?
Nobody.
You were on your own.
That's the definition of a disappointment. Nobody showed up but me. Well, we could try to talk about something important.
I think we are,
or not.
Talking about very important things. And we've gone from, sort of the borderline between astrology and numerology and science and ethic committees, and the whole business of who gets to decide, so power issues, and criteria of measurement.
Oh God, yeah, that gets too close to evaluation. Ugh. Reminds me of evaluating research, a course I took and still have the book for it. I look at it every once in a while. I snarl at it and say, stay in that shelf. Do not come out.
So that's a really, actually, yeah. I was having an interesting conversation. This is very rare for me, with students yesterday. And they were talking about what constitutes knowledge. Well, I've never, ever had a conversation with students about what constitutes knowledge ever before. Do you have these conversations? I suppose you might.
I do. Because at the moment I'm supporting a class on Descartes. And Descartes' project is to find true knowledge. So that my seminar with my 2 groups of students yesterday was called Descartes on Knowledge. And it was interesting because they were saying in the seminar that they really just, they've been trying to do the reading, and all the bits that I was highlighting to them were the bits that they just glossed over because they didn't understand it. And one of my students actually just said, I just ignored it. I just stopped reading. Well, very wise.
That's very apt.
Yeah.
Very apt.
Yes, but I was saying to them that, you know, I just said something at one point. I said, well, obvious. And then I looked, I said, it's obvious, isn't it? It's really obvious to me with my 25 years of reading this book and all of the teaching that people have done to me and all the teaching I've done. And I said, it's patently not obvious to you, is it? And that sort of just, yeah, made me realise it's very, very, very difficult to support students when you don't know what they aren't going to get.
Yeah, it's just, they're just a bunch of black boxes, a jumble of unknown unknowns, and
yes,
yeah, a question I ask students is, what does learning feel like? Because, you know, in my own body, when I learn something, I actually feel something in a particular part of my body. And they look at me like, well, that's about as odd as, and then we talk about as odd as that can be. You know, they try to talk about it too. You know, the notion of being embodied, you know, as knowledge is pretty foreign to them. Although I value my body telling me when I know something. You know, you get that click. People talk about it as a click. Well,
yeah,
I think that's.
I like that idea, because learning a language, I was speaking to a friend of mine who's an ex-student yesterday, and we talked about learning languages. I said to him, I distinctly remember there was one day where it suddenly occurred to me that I could understand French. And it was a terrible shock because I'm English. I shouldn't be able to do that. That it was how I felt. There was a sort of dissonance between understanding and feeling that I shouldn't be understanding. And he said to me, he had a similar experience of learning English, where he suddenly realized he was no longer translating.
Nobody in the middle.
No.
Do you dream in French?
Yes.
Mm.
Well, it depends who's speaking.
Yeah. I had a dream when I was doing my finals in philosophy, and I had Wittgenstein, Nietzsche, and Kant all shouting at each other in broken German and bad English. And I was just shouting back at them in my dream, for goodness sake, speak German.
That sounds like a nightmare. Not
It
a
was.
dream.
It was. It was. It was. Yes, they made more sense in my dream than they did when I was awake, though. So there's that.
So that's an interesting question. So for you, Nietzsche and so on, they are really embodied characters in your dreams, at least, or in your life. They are present.
Yes.
And Deleuze and Guattari is the same. They're present.
Yes. Yeah. The problem with people once they're dead is live people, they can change their minds, but dead people, very often they're stuck saying the same things over and over, aren't they?
Some people are dead before they're dead.
Yes, many people.
So what if you're working with dead authors and you're working with live authors? Is there a sort of status? Do you go to the people who are alive first?
Well, all the people I'm working with are dead.
Ah.
That's reminded me. One of my students yesterday said he wasn't understanding Descartes and he just needed to go and read it again. And I looked at him and said, the problem is he'll just say the same thing over and over again. If you're not getting Descartes, you need to read somebody else.
So that's an interesting question. maybe the thing I wonder, if I look at my kids, they don't actually read very much at all. They spend their time doing stuff with videos and video games and stuff like that. So the question is if you take oral history and you have these stories which are passed down orally generation after generation and generation, and then you go to the whole sort of book thing where you pass the book down, at what stage do books become disconnected from people? And if the people are dead, the business of doing what we're doing, collaborating and having these conversations, do you situate Nietzsche and so on in conversations with people that surrounding them, or do you situate them in conversations sort of conceptually with different epoch? Do you see what I'm saying? So, for example, can Nietzsche have a discussion with somebody from a different century?
Yes, actually, because I know I joke about them saying the same thing, and of course they do, but it depends how you interpret it, doesn't it? And I think when you read stuff like Nietzsche, you're amazed just how relevant it seems today. Not so much Plato. He talks a lot, does Plato, but not very much that's worth reading. Oh no, I don't know though. Mind you, read Plato on democracy. Look at Plato's Republic and see what he says about democracy. When I read it in the 90s, I thought, no way. But look at it now, and it's just all decaying, isn't it? So what's that word? What's the thing that we got the most shit in charge? Cacostrophe or something like that. It ought to be something like that, oughtn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
It's the caca thingy bobs.
Yeah.
Cacocracy.
Cacocracy or something like that.
Well,
because this comes back to what you were saying, Terry, about your students. The question I wonder about is, because if I take my own experience over the past three years, it seems a lot longer. I would, on my own, never have heard of Deleuze, and that might have been a good thing. But I did. And then these people became sort of figures, characters, and sort of checkpoints or landmarks or human marks, I'm not sure what. And sort of conversations, they were sort of, it's like the whole thing with research. I mean, the only reason I'd read a pile of this stuff is because I've got questions to ask. And it was only by rise of 14, really, that I could sort of accept that researchers weren't a bunch of people that had nothing to do with me. So I'm just wondering for a lot of students, firstly, how they, somebody said to me yesterday, I said, have you ever read Foucault? And the girl said, yes, I hated it. And I said, so tell me about, why did you read Foucault? And she said, well, I didn't actually read Foucault, but the teacher took excerpts from Foucault and we had to read them in depth. And we didn't actually get to read the book. We just read the different bits, passages that the teacher told us to read. And we couldn't actually put it all, well, we didn't put it together. We just, sat there bored.
Yeah. We decontextualize everything. That's modern, postmodern, modern intellectual strategy. And I don't know, to me, the people that I read and have read over the years, it's more like, I'm exploring and to run across them. I leave, I've run across their trailblaze, right? And their trailblaze is their book or poetry or whatever it is. And I can go back to it anytime I want to, but I'm forging ahead with my own life and exploring and trying to figure out things in relation to that, and kind of dead. But in another way, it's like poetry for me is poets are people who get you to breathe in exactly the same way that they did. In other words, if you read their poetry out loud, then what you're doing is you're kind of a ghost of them, breathing it in the rhythms and the rhymes and everything the same way. So we can get really close. We get really close to these people, but they're still ghosts. Is that it's a little out there? But
no, because
they feel
the
like
question
ghosts.
I wonder is if you take Nietzsche, Sarah, is his sort of human existence, his day-to-day life important to you, or is it just his books?
Just his books, really. Yeah. You don't need to know.
For me, some of the most.
Yeah, sorry, Terry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking,
No, go ahead.
you don't need to know about a poet's life or an author's life in order to be moved by what they write, do you?
No.
I think the more I found out about Nietzsche, the less I liked what he was saying. Russell, the same. I used to love Bertie, and he was just such a git that it's very difficult for me to.
Although some of the books that I've read that are most important to me are these hybrids of philosophy and autobiography. Something like Walden, to me, is both. Something like Miles Horton, the guy who was one of the founders of the citizenship schools in the South. You know,
right, yes.
He wrote those marvelous books with other people usually, and a lot of times they're just they're personal narratives of his life. So I think the best books are ones that are where you can't differentiate their lives from. Of course, if they're gits like like Russell or one of my favorite writers is the science guy Einman. But I found out he was he had feet of clay just like everybody else, right?
Yeah.
And it affected the way I looked at him, the way I looked at his philosophy of learning science and doing science. So I kind of fall on both sides of this, Simon.
Because for me, I don't know quite. I suppose. Well, I mean, I could probably work it out, but if I read Deleuze and Guattari, I immediately wanted to know who these people were and try to situate them as people, and then to see how they were connected to other people, and who were they speaking to, and what were they living, and at what period, what was going on at the same time, because I have this sort of need to situate people in relation to others.
Yeah, and I was having a conversation with people in a Deleuze and Guattari Facebook group about this, because for me, it's useful to know that who Deleuze's orphans were. So it's useful to me to know that he rates Nietzsche and Bergson and Lucretius. That's how one way I situate him. But if it's not useful to you, then don't bother. Situate people in ways that are contextually relevant to you, I think.
So I think that's what you just said. I think is really important because it connects in with what I'm looking at the moment, which is how it is that certain actions emerge or certain trends emerge in groups where you have these influences, which can be venal, or it could be intellectual, or it could be, and they move in connection with these people.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm sort of looking at all of this as well. Yeah, how things emerge. And I think actually Kevin's giving a presentation on this at the weekend about things emerging in CL MOOC. So interesting that it's all, well, maybe it's fairly obvious that we're all sort of thinking about the same sort of things.
Well, that's quite the point, because it's not an accident if we're speaking to each other.
Yes.
There is a certain amount of, decision which is is developed over a period of 3 years. So that's not. There's quite a lot of filtering been going on from then to now.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of
filtering and reinforcing.
Yeah.
A lot of reinforcing too.
Yeah.
Because I wrote that blog post about basic ignorance, you might say, and then I think Sarah saw it and said, "That's you just mentioned it. How yeah." They mentioned about Descartes ignoring, and I think that's part of how we learn in layers, right? The things that we ignore are the things we don't understand, and unless somebody points them out to us, that's our function as teachers. That's what I've had to do over and over and over again when I was marking papers, is to report on the thing. You ignored this in the article, and it's absolutely crucial for somebody who hasn't read the article know it. So, and then you got to ask yourself, well, is going back to that article really going to help all that much? Or is this a developmental thing? They won't get it until later.
Yeah. And sometimes going back does help, and sometimes it doesn't.
Right. Or going back and talking about it instead of going back and reading it, or going back and writing a little more. Like I'm asking them to revise their papers. I'm going to see, boy, this will be the real test, is in the revision. Did they get it? I suspect some of them will, some won't. Go ahead.
This is something which I'm sort of working on at the moment, which is the question of mediation. And when I say mediation, what I'm talking about is human mediation. Because if you take the case of language learning, I've got many examples of students who, if they're with me in a classroom, they're actually not doing any learning at all, because what the problem is the classroom. And the other problem is me, because they can't. They simply see me as sort of this aging, weird guy who has power over them, and so they most of the time they're not really concerned, because they just see it as another one of those classes. And then if you introduce, so I introduced, for example, Thomas, my son, into a class to see. I've done this with a number of people. So I did it with you, Terry, the other day with that class of teachers, and everything shifts because their attention is, firstly, if they can identify with that person, because the person is younger or about their age. They understand things completely differently, and because firstly, on top of that, they're attentive. So, yeah, I sort of try to take students who have already been through the mill, as it were, and bring them back in. So where they've already had a year or 2 years or 3 years learning, to bring them back in with people of a younger generation. And I find that is really, really helpful. And the interviews that I've done just recently, they basically, they all say the same thing. That firstly, if you just look at the photographs, they're completely enthralled in the conversation, and they are focused on that person in a way that with me they're not focused. And the other thing is that the person who has been through the mill has already filtered through that over a period of 2 or 3 years, and so they're able to help students with blind spots, and they plant seeds in a different way than I would. So I suppose on Tuesday I had a guy who was in Peru who was talking about freedom and talking about how students in an academics university situation, they can't actually relate to what's going on because they're constantly being forced to be compliant to something which they don't actually want to do. So anything which is introduced into that, it's like the you know, if you have, I don't know, Christmas pudding in a prison, it's still fucking prison.
Yeah.
Christmas in a prison is worse than, you know, not having Christmas in some respects, because you can't celebrate it because all you think you have is loss. So I think for a lot of students, in France, I don't know about in other circumstances, but certainly in France, they're there because they feel that they need to be there so that they can get a better job. But if they could avoid that, if they could find a way to actually get a piece of paper to get a better job without actually going through all the nonsense before, they would probably take it immediately.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can.
No, go, Tay.
I was just going to say that sometimes I've been able to manage that without bringing somebody in by essentially taking on another persona. I become the person I was before I became a teacher. Like I was trying to explain to them just a very simple idea of workflow and how persistence is really the main thing. If you want to get stuff done, you know, you're going to fail a lot. You just keep coming back to it. And that means you have to have something that you're passionate and care about to kind of fuel that. And I told him, since that goes back to my days as a business owner. I owned a chimney cleaning and repair business for about 10 years. And I discovered it was the best university I ever went to, because I was kind of had to go here and there, and I was testing things on a regular basis. And I bought these business cassette tapes where this guy on there, his nickname was Sooty Bob. And Sooty Bob had this one thing that stuck with me. And it's an old salesman's proverb. It says, plan your work your plan. And I started talking about that. I could see the glaze going over their eyes. And then I told them, of course, I paid for my farm and my education, my master's degree, with this plan. Then all of a sudden they popped up. Like you said, the reference to something that related to their lives, like, oh, this might make me money. I know it's rather venal, but yeah, I'll take it. So I took on the identity of somebody who had a business and actually used this technique in my business to make money. And so there's that. There are ways to do it without. I agree with you. They're not as effective as having just somebody come in from the outside. I've thought about bringing my Darth Vader helmet in with the voice changer in it and just teaching the whole class with that thing on.
I am your father.
I take that as two votes to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the same sort of thing, right? You know, just you can put on a mask and become a different person.
But what you're just saying now is something which, for sure, some of the best classes I've had have been theatrical ones, and in the context I'm in, it works. Sort of that class I'm thinking about was a week's intensive, so you had them together over a period where you could build up that sort of, well, the whole sort of how can I put it, cast, and we're in this together sort of thing. Whereas when you're in between biomechanics and lunch, then suspense of disbelief is not so easy.
Too much. It's too big an ask. It really is.
It's like the guy yesterday who we went outside, and I thought this is great. We're going to be out in the sun. It's beautiful, 25 degrees. We'll put the blackboard outside. That'll be a sort of ironic gesture. And there was a guy who was looking really miserable, and I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm allergic to cut grass." So he stood there.
There is no pleasing some people.
He just wanted to leave. And I said, "Well, maybe we should go back inside." And he said, "No, it's too late now."
That's it. You've killed me.
Yeah. So it's just made me laugh. It's another of these heroic failures.
Yeah. Those are the best kind. The ones that just leave you slack-jawed with wonder at your own ineptitude.
Yeah.
I had a professor at university who decided we should do the peripatetic style of philosophy, but the walking style. But he was like over. He was over 6. He was over 6 foot tall, right? And he would walk really long legs, and so he was marching along, and he was talking this wonderful philosophy, and all of us were trying to run to keep up with him. And it really was one of those Monty Python moments. And then he turned around and he said, "None of you are talking." And we were out of breath, bright red in the face.
Yeah, because that's the problem we have all this sort of filtering that's been going on for centuries and centuries. So we've got sort of these bits and pieces of what people say is Plato. But
well, at least Plato stopped every once in a while in some sort of grove of academia or something, right?
Well, yeah, he stopped in the Agora as well.
Yeah, you stop, you walk, and you stop. You walk and you stop, right? The walking part is where you're kind of digesting, right? That's the way I've always understood it.
Yes.
But some people obviously. I thought when you said when he looked around, there was nobody there. That would have been perfect. Oh, everybody, or they were 100 yards back.
Those are the best classes.
My wife is a interpreter at a national park, Mammoth Cave National Park, and I've done cave tours before myself for a couple of different jobs, and that's what you do. It's like they teach you in school. You don't pass out papers and ask them questions at the same time because they literally can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I used to cruelly take in 8th grade classes I was teaching. I have a handout that had 2 sheets on it. I'd put one on one side of the room and one on the other and just wait for the train wreck in the middle, right? As they were passing the papers back. In the middle, it was like, I don't know, what do I do? Do I give these to you? Do you give these to me? You got to mess with them sometimes. You just really got to throw maybe that's what he was doing, Sarah, was just kind of messing with you all.
Well, I don't know. Whatever he was doing, he's stuck in my mind after all these years.
He succeeded.
Yeah,
he succeeded, didn't he?
But what's
learning?
What's the lesson that you retain from it?
The emotional one, the one that you felt, as opposed to the thing that you knew. Yeah, I think that's what you remembered.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think the lesson I learned was that, maybe you should practice some of your good ideas before inflicting them on people.
That's what he was doing.
That's right. Practicing I was experimenting on you. Isn't it great that teaching allows and encourages that? Love that.
Yes.
Can you just repeat what you said, Terry?
I said that teaching, isn't it great that teaching is the job that allows and encourages this kind of rampant experimentation.
I don't think that's
talk
right.
about that. Well, that's what I do. I experiment all the time.
That's not the case. Most people don't do experiments.
No, you're right. You're right. They follow the curriculum, which is big left turns. That's all it is.
Well, most people probably don't just do this rampant experimentation because they've got students as consumers who will complain if they don't get the degree that they believe they need.
Right. And do we really want
what they want?
Yeah.
The rampant experimentation when we're teaching doctors or nurses how to do a blood work? Probably not at first. Yeah, you're right. There's some things that we don't do.
But you can do some sort of rampant sort of role play on how they ought to tell patients that they have an incurable disease, couldn't you?
Yes, you could. There's lots of uses for it.
Yeah.
Probably more than we realize. Improvisation is a wonderful, universal tactic, strategy.
Yeah. I'm part of a leadership program at the moment, which is many things. It's quite good fun. But I just remember a couple of weeks ago, one of the people just saying, "I hope there's no role play. I hate role play." And the week before, he'd done the most amazing role play. So he might hate it, but we loved him doing it. But yes, we all hate role play, don't we?
Well, perhaps we do, and perhaps we don't, mate. But perhaps we do when we're told that's what we're doing.
Yes, exactly. And it's like, there's a story in John Stuart Mill's autobiography about his father and godfather saying, "Right, little boys have to have fun. Here's a park. There's a tree. Go and climb it. Have fun while you're doing it." And that's not how fun works, is it? And I was sort of thinking about this.
Yeah.
So if you want to make learning fun, you'll probably just kill the fun and kill the learning. If you tell students that we're going to have fun today.
That reminds me of a physics teacher I had, and he said, we're going to do this really amazing experiment. And Jesus, was it a letdown?
Yep.
Because nothing worse than building up everybody's expectations which are divergent. And you get to a plank which is propped up with a little wooden trolley which slides down and with ticker tape going behind it.
Yeah, you expect something like that for at least to blow some shit up, right?
Yeah, those
gonna blow some
shit
up.
You really remember.
It's like telling somebody to act naturally. Okay.
That's it. Yes. Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Don't look at the camera.
Don't act natural.
The real question I wonder is there any real learning going on inside the prison walls? And if it is, what is it about? Is it about survival in the prison, or is it about learning?
Well, I take my cue for that question from the people who do training in corporations and outside of the learning institutions we call universities. And one guy, Charles Jennings, he called it 70-20-10 learning. the 10% of training is what we do in the classroom. That just accounts for 10% of the learning that you do on a job. And that 20% of it comes from, other just kind of informal. I mean, 70% comes from informal stuff that you learn actually working on the job. It's you're not only you're applying knowledge, but you're also creating tacit knowledge from the experience. Not forgotten what the other 20% is, but the point is that that most of our learning comes from actually being and doing, and usually a task, a project, or something focuses our attention. And I think in a classroom, it's like, I think it's about 10%. And I don't know that we really direct the most important. If we could say, okay, the 10%, this is the thing I really want you to remember, and have them know it and remember it, that wouldn't work. I don't even know how it works sometimes. If you tell them that you wanted to remember it, that's the first thing they forget. And kind of now. So.
I think I'm going to go back and think about. I tried to really think about the hours and hours and hours and hours I spent, and what is it do I retain now?
Yeah.
Um,
That's depressing, Simon. It could be very depressing.
I know. I think it's depressing. I think it shows the power of filtering.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I think, for example, of a Latin lesson or a physics lesson, well, I learned to find a space where I was undisturbed, which was generally next to the window, so I could draw and pretend that I was doing something. And I'd look up from time to time to sort of make sure the teacher didn't think I was not being attentive, but I spent my time drawing. And I think that that is really what I've learned, is that to find ways to make space to really learn, or to really be, or to really where it's not transactional. This is a space like that. I could be doodling in Latin.
I agree. I agree that the learning is relentlessly idiosyncratic, and that maybe our goal as learners, maybe our students' goal as learners, are to discover what their idiosyncrasies are. Because if they do that, well, the game, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm sitting here doodling, by the way. Always doodling or knitting.
It's the same, isn't it? I suppose knitting is more visibly productive.
Yeah, but it's exactly the same. It turns off that sort of chattering part of your brain and lets you concentrate. Right, it does for me anyway.
Yeah, I actually wonder about that. This is something which came out yesterday when we were outside.
Killing your students with the class.
Yeah. And the other people were talking about how they were suddenly much more sensory aware of what's going on, because there's the birds, and then there were people walking past, and so on. So they said two things. Firstly, some of them said at the beginning it was difficult to focus because they're in this new environment where there's all sorts of things which are attracting their attention. And then after a while, they said, "This is real. This is real." I mean, it's quite weird because it was. I mean, if I'd done the class inside, it would have been, I would have behaved in the same way. We had a board to write on. We had moments where they would go off and speak together, and then moments where we got them all together, and I would speak to them, or somebody else would speak to them. It was the same, but they said this is real.
Right.
Sometimes I play a game with myself when I just have to mark stuff up, and I'm expected to mark stuff up. So I'll grab a pile of papers and I'll just go out the door and stop, grade 1 on a wall, or just go to where people are, and I'll mark stuff up. There's a fountain nearby, I go there, and I might walk half a mile grading papers. When I come back, it's all felt a lot more real to me, even though it's no different than what I've been doing before. Yeah. The outside is enabling in a lot of ways.
I often take all my books outside and just lie on the grass. If I've got to be studying, I might as well be doing it somewhere nice. And it's I guess the fact that you just have a certain set of books makes you read them, but it's not as painful.
Yeah, I've been trying to work on shifting the sort of attention which was trained into me, or dragged into me, or of what it is to be a language teacher. So all these sort of techniques which were about focusing on language and focusing on mistakes and focusing on repetition and focusing on chorusing and focusing on and little by little I've been dropping all this and focusing on let's for Christ's sake stop being a teacher, and let's start looking at this in a completely different way, which is to say, okay, I want to help these people to learn, and I'm not quite sure what it is they're going to learn, but I want them to learn something, and then think about what are the things that I can help them learn. Well, one of the first things I try to help them learn is that I can like them or dislike them as human beings, but I'm doing a job which is a bit like the executioner who says, I have nothing against you, but I'm sorry about this. I have to kill you.
Yeah.
So there's sort of pointing out the bars, pointing out how they're behaving it, because it's just ritualistic behavior which they've learned over years and years and years and years. Trying to learn about who these people are so that I can treat them as people and not just as students. And trying to find things which they like, and things which they're good at, or things which they don't like or they're not good at. And just their stories of reading or listening or speaking, and with whom they are comfortable with, and what it is they want out of it. So if they'd much rather not be there, then they tell me that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I let my students do that as well. They're allowed not to want to do my subject, but they just have to do it. That's fine.
I just had a phrase run through my head. Oh, go ahead, sir.
No, you go.
Just a phrase that ran through my head when you were talking about this. Decontextualizing the teaching and contextualizing the learning. That seems to me to describe what you're doing, Simon, Sarah. This, you are. This comes with experience. If you're new at something, you're not going to you're going to keep everything in the context of your teaching. You just are. At least some of the tricks, ways of being, just so you can survive. But once you've got some of that, then you begin applying it into what the behavioralists call the stimulus field. I love that expression. The stimulus field being teachers, other human beings, learners. And that's where you should contextualize. You should contextualize within the learning that the students are doing right then and right there, if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the action?
You know, and it's sometimes so. That might be a handy way of thinking about it.
I think that for me, the really big thing is focusing on what action is observable. What are they actually doing? What is the so for example, if it's a text, how did they get to be reading the text? Where did it come from? Does it come from? Did they go to the library to get it? Did they decide give them just a photocopy? Did they choose it in some? Why, you know, why? What reasons? How does that fit to other things? How does it connect? Is it just because it's English? Is it just because the teacher said that they should read it, or is it something which is connected to something else? And as soon as there's something connected to something else, or if it's not connected to something else, then I want to try to make connections with other things. Because coming back to what Sarah was saying about this dreamy of conversations, I think for a lot of people, me and everybody included, that we're just blind to the conversation, or deaf to the conversation. We're not part of the conversation. A student said to me yesterday, she said she was very, very low level in English. Very low. And I spoke to her and I said, she's a horse riding person. So I said, you know, if you wanted to overcome this problem, it wouldn't take you very long. Look, here's some horse riding stables in Ireland and they're looking for somebody to help them out. You could get off to Ireland and after about, let's say, 6 months, you wouldn't have the same problem. And she said to me, I'm one of these people who gives up easily. And I said, well, if you're going to work, she's going to work as an adapted physical activity teacher. I said, well, that can be an advantage to you if you can deal with that thing that you say, I'm that sort of person that always gives up. And I don't believe that. I think that's something connected to that activity, but not other activities.
Yeah.
And or somebody says I'm lazy, I don't believe the person's lazy. I think that's a very useless word. You know, they're probably really, really active at doing nothing, but that's not lazy.
No, it's about motivation, isn't it?
Yeah.
James Clay has got a great blog post about why he doesn't have a dog. And it's because he doesn't have time to have a dog, but obviously other people have time to have dogs. So it's not, there's nothing about having a dog that is beyond him. But it is just about what motivates people to have dogs and what motivates him not to have a dog. And I think that's all the connected, and it's a great blog post.
I'm just thinking the other thing she said was, I don't want to interrupt other people because I understand so much less than the others, and you're not going to stop every 5 minutes for me. So you know, I can think of any number of situations. When I first looked at a MOOC, it was about 2011, and I didn't feel part of it at all because I didn't know what a blog was. I wasn't on Twitter. These people sounded pretty scary, and I was less than a lurker. I was a sort of the one that peers over the fence and thinks this is not for me. So that for her is a bit similar, and it's getting a leg up. Coming back to the tourist guide thing, it's clear that if you're trying to learn a language, you're trying to watch American series on TV. If you got nobody around you who's watching American series, it's very difficult actually to get into that for a lot of people. It's just noise. So you need other people to mediate that. And it's like guides, you know, if you go to walk around the caves, you just see rock. What you need is a story.
Yeah.
You need a story between your walking and that piece of rock to make it come alive.
Yeah, it's no mistake that people with those jobs are also called interpreters.
Mm.
Mediators of sorts.
And I think that business of mediation and interpretation, if you have no idea of what a book is, it's like that video of and this is a book, you know, the medieval what's it called?
Yes.
The medieval help desk.
Medieval help desk. Yeah, yeah.
It's very much that. You have absolutely fucking no idea of how to use it. You can't put it in any context of your life. And I think for a lot of students, that's how it is. It's why would I need this?
Or it's even worse than that, is they think they know what's going on, and they don't really know what's going on. At least if you're learning a foreign language, well, it's a pretty cut and dried. Either you're understanding shit or you're not, right? And some people fool themselves that they're getting it. Just completely fool themselves.
Yes.
Whatever it is.
I think it's actually circular. I think you go from thinking you understand to discovering that you were right in the first place, that you don't understand anything.
That's... Well, everything's a footnote to Socrates anyway, right? That's what he said.
Well, I was just thinking that, yes, the more I know that I know nothing. Yes.
Yes.
It's sort of reassuring. It's the
Yeah, thanks.
It keeps you going. It's like the filter thing.
It's reassuring. Yeah, yeah. It's also a cop-out.
Yeah. Well, I was saying this to my student yesterday. That, it's some people say, oh, and every time I go back and I read a book, I get more out of it. I said, 25 years of Descartes, don't get any more out of it. Sometimes you just have sucked everything out of it.
It's run the other way. Yeah, but that's another question. Was Descartes wanting you to get anything out of it?
Oh yeah, yes.
So he
I think no. Well, I think I got quite a bit out of it the first few times around. The first 20 years probably. It's just.
So with Descartes, if he were alive, would that help?
No. I just didn't want to punch him.
Punching Descartes. That's a great title for a book.
Yeah.
That reminds me, for some reason, of this old Bill and Ted Excellent Adventure movies, where they would go back and visit people in history. Beethoven. I think they visited Socrates, and Beethoven they took to a mall. And when he was in the mall, he went to the music store. This is like 80s, and in the music store, he started playing on the piano, which of course was that even invented when he was composing? I'm not sure, but sometimes these people would just be dicks, right? I think Descartes would just be a dick.
Yeah.
I think therefore I am a dick.
It's a thing. I think a lot of philosophers are male, and a lot of them are dicks.
All of them are.
Wait a minute, we're getting into logic now. I object. All philosophers are dicks. All males are dicks. All philosophers are male. Therefore, all males are dicks.
I think that I hate to agree with Sarah, but I think she's got a point. And when I say I think she's got a point, already I'm aware of the sort of the problem of saying it, because there is that question of we can't get out of it. Men and their relationship with the world.
Right. Yeah. Where do we go from here? Okay, we've established this fact. Now where do we go? That usually leaves people with their shoulders shrugging, like, I don't know.
I wasn't saying that they were dicks because they were men. I was saying they were dicks because they're philosophers. I suspect maybe there's something about the analytic philosophy that just attracts unpleasant personalities. Maybe
It's, you know, they attract authoritarian people, right?
Yeah.
Why?
So they can practice authority, right? So they can be authoritarian.
I mean, analytic
Kind
philosophy.
of circular, but
And analytic philosophy is very much about shouting very loud about I'm right and here's my proof that's very obscure and none of you will get it. But there you go.
You're too stupid.
And I've written it in I've written it in logic, so that proves it.
Yeah, because that's a big question about, you know, the whole business of status with knowledge and expertise. You know, blaming this poor bugger who don't understand what we're saying. They're too stupid. They don't understand what I have to bring them.
yeah, it's the expert problem come to life. Experts have already done the gut work, presumably, and they've left that far behind, and they don't see how. They're kind of unsympathetic, unempathetic about people who follow behind, and you know, like writers. Okay, good writers are endlessly revising, 20, 30, 40 revisions. That's not unusual. And what they've done is they've you know, keep removing the cruft and the stuff that's not necessary until they finally got it home the way they want it as best they can. And even then, a lot of writers don't want to let it go. But they don't acknowledge that to get to the final product, that had to go through distance. And then they expect somebody reading it to get it the first time or even the second time. Even works, you know, popular works that I assign in class are full of complications, and I'll read it second, third, and fourth time and say, oh, I missed that. Then I begin to wonder, what else have I missed? What else is there that is just embedded in it that I can't get? It's appalling. It's exhilarating, but it's also appalling.
Yeah, and this is something that it's really hard to teach students as well, just how much revision there is when people write. You look at other people and you think, oh my God, they're such a wonderful writer. It must come easily to them. And you don't see all of the blood, sweat and tears that goes behind it. Maybe it's not useful to say to students that you revise things 30, 40, 50 times when they're just writing their undergraduate essays. But
definitely not.
Yeah.
But when they get to the dissertations, you know, then maybe that's when they should be doing it. I had a professor early on tell me not to worry too much about what I was missing, just to concentrate on what I was getting. And he said, good writers, if it's important, then they will say it more than once. So they'll say it in different ways. I said, yeah, but that's fine. But what about all these bad writers you keep giving me for my degree?
I'm just thinking about this business of philosophy and walking around correcting papers in the countryside and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if this is not what it's about. It's not so much the stalagmites and the stalactites and the second tome of Deleuze and Guattari, which is important. What's important is to be is to get them to actually walk a path, which might include that, but perhaps not. Hopefully not for them. But the path is what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And to go back to Descartes again, What I was trying to explain to my students yesterday is what Descartes is actually encouraging people to do. He's not going to read his book, but actually go and think through his process for themselves. Yeah.
Because Deleuze is the same thing.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah,
He
Deleuze
says,
would
I'm not going to bother, memorizing all this crap, because I don't. The whole business of his relationship with academia. He is constantly talking about, if I want to learn something or I want to teach somebody, it's not the intellectuals that are going to understand it. It's the people who are actually not intellectuals at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Wittgenstein the same. And I think both of Wittgenstein and Deleuze, they refuse to have an academic conversation. So you can tell sometimes who they're actually arguing against, but they don't want to. They don't want to say it because they don't want to close the conversation down. Gets very frustrating to other analytic philosophers who just don't know what they're on about.
So coming back to how does learning feel? I remember asking students about this. And how does it feel when they are doing athletics or pole vaulting and it's that feeling of wanting to go beyond somewhere. That is a tool. But I think we can relate to the that desire. That document I shared with you, which is called Still Learning.
Right.
Was a sort of collaborative effort which would come from about 5 years ago, which I haven't actually gone back and read. But it was learning stories. I just said, share a learning story. And there was people in Spain, there were people in Poland, there were people in UK, and they just shared a learning story. And I suspect that I need to go back and learn and read those.
Right.
Because how does it feel? And what are the stories that people consider important? And the whole sort of joy, because if there's no joy, and it's all sort of deathly serious, and now let us pray around Wittgenstein, well, that kills it. Because I'm sure that these people either were sort of driven by a vast need to write this stuff and think about it, or they were in the joy of playing around with it. Otherwise, it would never have done stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, nobody told them you must become Wittgenstein. When you grow up, I want you to become Wittgenstein.
Yeah. Although I don't think Wittgenstein found much joy in anything he did.
So despair?
I think he was driven. He tried to give up philosophy. He kept trying to give up philosophy. It's just it kept running after him, and he couldn't get away from it.
So what did he want to do apart from philosophy?
Well, he wanted to do something he thought was worthwhile, something practical. At one point, he went and worked in a hospital as a porter. Another time, he wrote tractatus in the German trenches. I think he thought that was something that's quite worthwhile. But yes, he didn't think what he was doing was worthwhile. He says somewhere the real philosophical answer is the one that gives me peace, the one that lets me stop doing philosophy when I want to. Poor man, tortured by philosophy. No, that's a real downer, isn't it? See, I'm making sure this really is the shittest of the picnics.
You haven't heard the others. I think this is another failure.
Yeah. What failed to be shit.
Exactly.
Oh, dear.
I mean, we tried.
Yeah, we did. I think the problem is that we forgot what we were meant to be doing. We went off and enjoyed ourselves, didn't we?
Yeah, so well, that's the fatal error.
Yeah.
because actually this is where the worthwhile stuff comes out.
Yes.
That's what I call a Feldgong. You know, that path you take, that walk you make, that not intending to do anything but put one foot in front of the other. And then the discoveries that you make are the ones that you make, and the people who come are the ones who come, and what you do is what you do. And you make it all together, and it's both shitty and wonderful. And that's the way that goes.
I didn't think there was any shit.
I wish my...
I think we failed miserably.
No, not really. And that's good. You know, epic fail is oftentimes means epic learn.
Yeah.
Unless it's Donald Trump, then it's all bets are off.
He is an epic character, isn't he, really?
He is that.
I mean, I don't think there's any Shakespearean character that comes close.
I don't know enough of the comedies, but yeah.
Yeah. That sort of motivates me to go and read Shakespeare in my next life.
Yes. So there's him and there's Boris, isn't there? You've got these bumbling buffoons. But, you know, there's Boris, who's one level, but Trump is just, he's a order of magnitude above all of that, isn't he?
He's exceptional. He is exceptional.
Yes, he is.
You,
I mean, this is not...
you might think of him as a... No. He might be a really stupid Falstaff. You know, that might be... Because at least Falstaff was self-aware. He is not aware of his own foolishness.
Yes.
Well, we don't know that.
No, I think we do. I think we do, just by his actions. Basically, he's the same human being he was in the 70s and 80s as a failed landlord in New York City. Hasn't changed much. He just kind of fell into the slot that rocketed him into the presidency.
It's pretty pathological.
If you think about all the things that had to happen for him to be president, and it is, if that doesn't make you believe in complexity theory, then nothing.
Oh, dear. Yeah. Yeah, it's for sure. We have got a pretty grim selection at the moment. It must be said, between Mayhem and Macron, the sort of Louis XIV Sun King.
Oh God, yes.
And Trump and who else we got? We got that Korean.
Oh yes.
Completely balmy. And who else we got? Well, I mean, a pretty good selection.
That's good.
Yeah.
If I were trading cards, you know, that would be. I wouldn't mind having any of those in my trading card collection.
Happy families. Now there is a dispute about who's first.
Oh yeah, exactly. I think the question that begs is, who cares?
Yeah.
Honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I think that at this point I come back to the fool. Thank God I'm not one of them.
Or maybe you're just an authentic fool, Simon.
You are. Thanks. That's
fool.
That's the biggest compliment that anybody's given me ever. You know, that is sort of my you know, if I'm a failed fool, that will do me.
Right. If you keep speaking truth to power, you will succeed.
Well, I try
As long
to
as you
avoid
does, as long as the king doesn't kill you.
I try
As
to
long as
avoid that.
as long as the king doesn't kill you.
No,
Right?
well,
If the king doesn't kill you, you're okay.
no. I learned pretty early on that was a bad idea. You know, you don't stay too close to people like that, because if as soon as they're in a it's a bad day, then the first person next to them gets their head cut off.
Exactly. One of my the truths I've discovered is that if you have to work in the same building as your boss, make sure your office is as far away from him as possible.
Yes.
And that has stood me very well.
You have an
Well,
office?
indeed. I've got an office, yes. Basement of
Wow.
academia.
Fuck, I haven't got an office. I've avoided
Come to
that.
Kentucky, man. We'll get you an office. We'll get you an office. I've even got a closet in my office where I've got a recliner where I take naps. My son calls it the learning hole. Like the memory hole, I guess, except for learning.
And the mercy seat.
Go back there and take a nap. Yes, exactly.
I have to go, you guys.
Yeah, me
I'm not
too.
going to. Okay. So Terry, if you want me to leave
Oh,
the
I'm going
broadcast
strong.
on,
I'm just going strong. I'll just keep talking here. I'll just leave it on. I'll just keep talking.
maybe that's a good idea. Actually, I think perhaps you could sort of debrief. I'll leave the recording on, and then if you want to,
No,
if you
don't
want to
do
continue.
that. No, too much responsibility. Screw
No,
that.
you don't accept that challenge.
I got to feed the cats. That's my excuse. I'm sticking with it.
That's a terrible excuse.
No, Sarah understands, right, Sarah?
I do, yes.
You got to feed the cats, man. It's just the way it is.
Yes, yeah, the cats would agree.
So I reckon that's a pretty circular picnic. We started off with cats, and they continued as a theme throughout. And we had the dog who didn't give a fuck about anything, who's now rolled off the couch to do I don't know what. And we're back to cats.
Yep.
So I think the cats basically win.
Cats always win.
And that's what makes it a shitty podcast or hangout, whatever you want to call it.
Right, I think we stop with that.
Right. Fantastic to talk to you too.
It's great. Next
Same here.
time, I don't know when it is, but it'll be. I look forward to it.
Yep, me too.
Me too. See you guys.
Thanks very much.
Bye bye.
That was
Bye-bye.
very, very restful.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.